Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Waffles and Wives podcast. Again, I am Alicia Miles, and I'm super excited about today's guest and our topic. I think it's very pertinent to these times, especially considering what we just came out of. And so this will be a great conversation for those that are thinking about getting married and the types of conversations you actually need to have prior to. So I want us to welcome Miss Tasha Minter-Allen. How are you?
I am great. Thank you so much for having me. I'm super excited about talking about this topic in particular. So yeah, I'm excited to get into it.
All right, awesome. So I want to kind of tell everybody that we're not new to each other. We actually go way back. I mean, way back.
I don't even remember how far.
Before elementary, yeah, right before.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe even no, I would say elementary school probably, because that's when we met in church.
Right.
We started doing all kinds of activities at church.
Yep. My mother and your grandmother ran in the same circles.
Yeah.
And everybody that's was a member of friendship during the 80s and 90s. We had no choice but to be together at least 3 or 4 days out the week.
There you go.
So I don't remember a time where we did not know each other or were not in each other's lives, honestly.
Correct. So we go way back, and we've kind of seen each other grow over the years and develop our families and our marriages. So I definitely want to tap into, what that dynamic looks like for you now with the children getting older, what that means on the finances, right? So let's just get into the topic. Today's topic is for rich or for poor. And I actually thought about this from a different perspective, that it's not always about money, that there is a space where we have this rich versus poor mindset. And so really like a positive versus a negative mindset when it comes to certain situations that we might face. And I think sometimes husbands and wives look at situations differently. We like to be like-minded, but that's not always the case, because we still do have individual minds. So I do want to go ahead and get started, though, into having the conversation about finances and marriage and how important it is to have those conversations and what that looks like. So where I want to start is, and I'll kind of chime in after you comment, but did you guys have marriage counseling, and did it include talking about financial responsibility prior to getting married?
We did have marriage counseling. And for those that don't know, I married into a ministry family, a family that is very heavily involved in ministry. My father-in-law married us, and my father-in-law also did the premarital counseling.
Okay.
The counseling, the financial part of the counseling was not very in-depth. Okay. He focused more on the spiritual asset of marriage, on the roles in the relationships, but not so much on the financial part. Mm-hmm. The thing about me is I came into the marriage with a financial background.
Okay.
I had just started my career at Synovus with CB&T during that time, and money has always been a thing that I have had a lot of background in. From starting a lemonade stand as a kid, I've always thought about how money works, how to make money work for me. And I knew that I wanted to have a marriage that basically we saw eye to eye when it came to finances. That wasn't the case with Marlon at all. We were not on the same page when it came to money, and we'll dig more into that later on in this conversation. But no, we did not have an in-depth conversation when it came to premarital counseling with finances. We didn't do it.
So neither did we. And our pastor, our church, our home church pastor, was the one who did counseling with us. And I feel like we didn't even get all of our days in prior to getting married. So we didn't have, I actually remember the conversation that we had, and I don't remember finances ever being one of the things that we talked about, right? And I don't know, I guess people just assume that that just should come natural, and it
Right.
doesn't, especially if you've never had to share your money, your income, you know, with someone else. Nobody really tells you how to navigate what that looks like. And of
Right.
course, you still have to figure it out for the two of you. Like, it's not going to be the same for, you know, every couple, but I think there's some basics to,
Mm-hmm.
you know, at least trying to figure out, okay, what do we do? How do we handle this? Where do our income go?
Mm-hmm.
So knowing what you know about finances and having the background in it and being the one that had the stronger idea about, okay, this is a proper way for us to handle this. Um, did you guys have to sit down and talk about it, or was it something that you like, this is my expectation and this is how we go
Mm-hmm.
handle it? And
Mm-hmm.
how did y'all ease into the conversation about, man, I'm assuming it had to happen early in the
Yeah.
marriage. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
It actually happened during the courtship, during while we were dating. We were walking in Publix one day, and Marlon talks about this in his testimony when he talks to people about us starting out and where we've come through, what we've come through. We were walking in Publix one day, and I just thought to ask him, what does your credit look like? No, it was a random
Yeah.
question, just
Mhm.
not even thinking that he was waiting for me to even ask that.
Oh,
And
okay.
once I asked that question, I mean, I opened up a can of all kind of stuff. It was just
Oh,
like, whoo, yeah, I've been waiting for you to
okay.
ask me this, and my credit is not the best.
Okay.
That conversation led to other conversations, led to me saying, you know what, if we ever get married, one of my things is I don't want to buy my own ring. I don't want to buy my own engagement ring. So whatever
Right.
we got to do, for you to be able to afford, you need to get what you can afford, because I don't want you financing anything, especially knowing the situation that you're in. So we started early
Okay.
talking about marriage. I mean, talking about money in our marriage and
Mhm.
how we were going to, tackle the debt that he had. He had played professional ball for a
Mhm.
little while, and he lived that professional athlete lifestyle.
Yeah. Yeah.
But when he went back home to Columbus, he was no longer a professional athlete. It was
Ah.
not. We both were early in corporate careers, and we did
Mhm.
not have those means to be balling like, folks that you see living that lifestyle. So we had to, dumb it down, pull it back, and look at, okay, what do we need to do? Let's pull our credit. Let's sit down. Let's see, things that the low hanging fruit, what we can pay off pretty
Okay.
early. Let's have a sensible wedding whenever we do
Okay.
get, because at that time we were not even engaged. But if
Okay.
we were going to have a wedding, I didn't want anything lavish, none of that stuff.
Yeah.
Because I wanted us to, build together. And that's kind of how the conversation came up. Just a random question walking in public, so how your credit is.
And my experience is we never talked about
Huh?
it. And we never talked about it.
Yeah.
We never talked about it. It wasn't until probably, and we courted for about 6 years. So I had
Okay.
plenty of time to ask all the questions I wanted to
Yeah.
ask.
Yeah.
For some reason, that money question is always like a taboo conversation. Like, you
Yep.
don't ask people about their money. But then hindsight, you're like, wait a minute, you're about to be my husband. I need to ask you, we're about
Right.
to share a life together. But it never dawned on me that that was a critical conversation that I needed to have. And
Yeah.
I think when we walked into our marriage, we were dealing with, I had student loan debt and stuff already.
Mm-hmm.
And my husband actually had no credit. So it
Okay.
was like, how did you get this far with no credit? I'm asking now
Mm-hmm.
I'm asking questions. So he was like,
Right.
no, cash only. Like, I'm paying cash for everything. I don't need credit cards. I'm like, okay, so is this a good thing or a bad thing? And then I realized we were both on two separate pages. And he
Yeah.
didn't care about the debt that I had. That wasn't the issue. I think it was just, how did you get in that situation was more
Mm-hmm.
so the concern for him. And so I wonder though, when you say you guys had, while you were recording, y'all had the conversations, did you ever think at any time, okay, this isn't going to work? Like, I know how to handle my funds, and with him having this experience with debt already and all this, did you ever at any moment doubt that you wouldn't be able to make your finances work? Did that ever come
No,
up? Okay.
I did it, and the reason why is because he was so upfront about it.
Okay.
He was wanting to have that conversation. But
Mhm.
I think he was more scared to tell me about the debt because I
Oh,
was such a tightwad when it came to money. Like I've always just been, I've always been like, I need to make sure I got some money saved. I can't,
mhm.
I'll go without just to make sure I can look in the bank and have money sitting there.
Yeah,
So I think it was one of them things that he was scared to talk about. But since I asked, it was like, okay, well, you asked, so let's talk
I
about it.
tell you.
But no,
Mhm.
I never thought it wasn't going to work because he was willing from the beginning
Mhm.
to have the conversation.
Good, good, good. Like I don't think I experienced that either. It wasn't a hard conversation. I think
Mm-hmm.
for me, trying to explain why I had so much debt at such a young age was harder for me because then it helped. I had to look at myself
Yeah,
and try to be like, how did I get here?
right.
And and so he's always been the one that's like, look, if I can't pay cash for it, I don't want it, I don't need it, it's not that
Yeah,
important, I can wait. Whereas I've always been the type of person where, dang, I want it right now. I want it right
right.
now. I need to buy it. And I'm not an overspender. I'm just I gotta have it
Mm-hmm.
right now person when it
Yeah,
comes to money.
yeah.
So, how do you guys share your financial responsibility? And the reason why I'm asking that question is because when we got married, we had two separate accounts.
Okay.
He had his account, I had mine, but we did not have a collective account.
Okay.
So everything was separate, and we did that for a few years. And I'm gonna tell you, those were the worst years ever when we had separate money. It
Yeah,
was literally the work. Like hindsight, we look and we go, "Oh my God, how do we get through the first 5 to 7 years of our marriage?" Because we literally were paycheck to paycheck struggling
yeah.
because we kept our money separate. And when you think
Mm-hmm.
about vows, that's not how it's supposed to be. So
Right.
how do you guys, even if it was different now or then, how do
Mm-hmm.
you guys share your financial responsibility?
Well, once we got engaged, that was one thing that I said, all right, this is I'm stronger in this, so I'm gonna handle the money.
Okay.
I've handled the money from the beginning.
Okay.
We always had a joint account. Everything went into the one account.
Mhm.
Now at the time he was working for the Boy Scouts and they got like an expense check on a
Mhm.
monthly basis. And I
Mhm.
would let him keep that expense check, but his main
Okay.
check was going into the checking account
Okay.
every single month, and that's how bills were paid. So
Okay.
we've never had separate accounts. Not that I know of.
Okay. Right. I will tell you that we after a few years when we realized it just was not working. Because
Mm-hmm.
I was the one who handled most of the money, but we also separated bills. So
Okay.
he would pay
Yeah.
certain bills with his check. I would pay certain bills from my
See, and
check.
I'm not that organized. I'm telling you, I can't keep up with all that. I can't keep up.
Right.
I need one spreadsheet. I need one checking account. I need all of that so
Right.
I could just, just click in here. I don't need you to give me $25 this month to put on this bill. I can't do that. So that's
Right.
why I didn't do that.
It's so true. Because I would always have to ask, okay, did you pay the light bill? Whatever we
See.
decided to split, however we split it. And I think at the time we might have been making the same amount of money. So it wasn't
Mm-hmm.
like, somebody was making more or whatever. It was
Mm-hmm.
just you get paid at this time of the month, I get paid
Right.
at this time.
Yep.
And when I tell you, those were the worst years of our life
Yeah.
because that was the only thing that we had not connected.
Right. Yeah.
Everything that we did was together, but the finances, for some reason, we couldn't figure out and we kept everything separate. It
Yeah.
wasn't until we combined our finances, our income, the expenses, everything came out, like you said, one account. We took care of all. It
Mm-hmm.
wasn't until we did that we started to see our financial situation turn around.
Yep.
And
Yeah.
so I wonder, do you think that if you make a choice to, and this has come up a couple of times, like with Gabrielle Union and how she said her and Dwayne,
Mm-hmm.
Wade handle their finances. Do you think that if you don't have everything connected in your marriage, you're supposed to do connected, do you think that sometimes that's God's way of saying you're not really living these vows how I want you to, and so there's going to be some type of consequence that comes with that?
Yeah, I don't even know if it's that deep. you
Okay.
know, because my sister, my oldest sister who has passed away now, I think
Mhm.
that's how they maneuvered.
Okay.
And, you know, and from the outside, it seemed like it worked. I know growing up watching my parents do it, it absolutely did not work. I mean, that was one
Mhm.
of the arguments that I would,
All the time.
you know,
Mhm.
witness with my mom and dad. And it was always around money. It was always around, you know, who's going to pay this and why this didn't get paid. Why'd you
Mhm.
do that? And I knew I just didn't want a marriage like that.
Mhm.
Now everybody that looks at our stuff might not think this works for them, but it
Mhm.
works for us. And it was
Okay.
Marlon realized came to money, he wasn't the best decision maker. And
Okay.
so it was just easier for him just bring his check home or have his check
Mhm.
direct deposit and let me do whatever I needed to do with it. That was kind of how his mom and dad, they, you know, their marriage was kind of set up the same way.
Okay.
So that's just what we did. But I don't know if God looks at it that way.
Okay.
I don't know people, and I'm that believer that God ain't that deep. You know, I think I
I got
think,
you.
you know, right. I think
I
he
got
just
you.
wants us to do what's right. You know, he
Yeah.
wants us to
Yeah.
give back to him. He wants us to help his folks, help
Yeah.
the less fortunate. You know, he wants us to take care of the house and he wants us to do those things. I don't think
Yeah.
he worries so much about the method,
Got
but long as the message of doing for others and
you.
trusting
Mhm.
and believing in him is what we get out of it, I think he's
Mhm.
pleased.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Good point. Good point. Good point.
Yeah.
So I do want to did you guys ever have, and I don't know that we've even experienced this, but did you guys ever have arguments even after marriage? Oh, okay.
What?
I,
Had one this morning. Like, oh, like, yeah, we
yeah.
do. I mean,
Okay.
yeah, I am the one that handles the money, but that doesn't necessarily mean he agrees
Okay.
with every decision I make when it comes to
Gotcha.
money.
Yeah.
You know, his thing is I always act like we about to get put out on the street. We ain't never been put out on the street. You act like we about to get put out on the street because I
Mhm.
am that one that I look at every angle of a purchase, you know, of a
Mhm.
purchase that a big, any type of big purchase. I'm like, do we really need it? I'll talk myself out of it before I
Yes,
talk myself into it.
absolutely.
And he is totally opposite. It's like, hey, let's get it. Let's do it. We got the money. Let's do it. So those are always our arguments. I've gotten better over the
Okay.
years. I have gotten a lot
Okay.
better, and I do allow a little bit more flexibility with spending. But
Mhm.
beforehand, no, I was a coupon clipper.
Mhm.
If we went out to eat, it was based off of if I had a Groupon or if, you know,
You
it
gonna
was
say
expensive.
wherever you can
Oh,
say.
I'm gonna save. I'm gonna save. Like I'm gonna spend money trying to save money. Like that is my thing. And it's just a
Yeah.
mental block. And I don't even know. I mean, we could be billionaires and I still think
Still
that
probably
I'll
do the
figure
same
out a way
thing.
to save some money.
Yeah.
Yeah, I do. I do. So
Yeah.
we argue about money a lot. We do.
But where does that come from though, Tasha? Where do you think, is it because you've seen certain things in your life over the years that you just become,
Yeah.
like really mindful? Okay,
Yep.
I don't want to ever be without.
Yep.
So, and I don't want
That's
to ever have to
exactly.
beg. Like,
Yep.
where did that come from for you?
That's exactly where it comes
Okay.
from. I
Okay.
watched my parents, both of them, work until they closed their eyes. You know, my dad, I mean,
Yeah.
that's where he was when he passed. He was
Mm-hmm.
working at the church. You know,
Mm-hmm.
if my mother had not had Alzheimer's, she would still be working the floors
Right.
of somebody's
You
hospital.
absolutely right.
That's just what they
Mhm.
did. They knew to go to work and get a check. I
Mhm.
can spend because I'm gonna always get a check. And I don't want to be like that. Like I really don't want to have to work so hard to make money. I want to be
Yep.
able to just enjoy life and have money, you know, be comfortable, just live comfortable. And to me, that comes with sacrifices early on. So
Okay.
later on, you know, I can enjoy myself.
Okay. I like
Yeah.
that a lot. I think sometimes when we do see things, and I came from a single parent home, so
Mm-hmm.
I saw a lot of struggle. I remember a time when my mom had to walk home from work because she couldn't afford maybe to get the car fixed or something. And I just knew
Yeah.
that I didn't want to be in that situation. And so we've
Right.
gotten much better at watching how we spend and then, saying, okay, we worked hard enough. Let's kind of reward ourselves
Yep.
for being diligent over the money. So, but I'm like you, if we don't have to buy it, if it's not
Yeah.
something we have to have,
Right.
let's, yeah, we've gotten better, but it hasn't always been like that. Matter of fact, we were sitting in Applebee's, you were sitting at Applebee's, and it just came out of nowhere. I said, bruh, you remember when we could not even go out to eat because we just literally did not manage money well. And so being
Mm-hmm.
able to do that now has just really changed how we live. And I think,
Mm-hmm.
looking at it now, it was like, okay, I'm glad we decided to make that change and really think
Yeah.
about how, because that was my thing. I don't want to work till I'm 80. I don't want to work
Right.
till I'm 85. Like, we've got to figure this out.
Right. I remember being I would say laughed at, talked about when I was at
Mhm,
CB&T because I used to take a lunch. I used to take a lunch in a brown paper sack. And
mhm,
I ain't have any type of shame or pride about it. I took my lunch because I knew what me and Marlon were working on. I had my
mhm.
same Geo Prism that my mom bought for me when I was 15. I
Oh,
was a
wow.
banking officer at CB&T, still riding in that car where I couldn't even get in on the driver's side. Like I had to climb in on the passenger side to open up the door so I can get in on the driver's side. And I didn't care because I
Oh,
I had it
because you
go.
weren't paying on it, were you?
Yeah,
Okay.
it wasn't, I didn't have a car note or nothing. So I had a goal in mind. So I didn't care. And then when we had our first child, when we had MJ, and I decided I wanted to try to stay at home mom thing out, we could do it
Mhm,
because of the sacrifices that we made early on in our marriage. And people at the bank was asking some of my close friends at the bank, how's she gonna do that? Because she
mhm,
was bringing those lunches every day and she
mhm.
wasn't, trying to keep up with everybody else and get another car when her Prism was getting her from point A to point B.
It
So
was just
that's
fine.
yeah. So right. Those early sacrifices so we can take 2 and 3 trips with our kids. Last year we were able to go to Puerto Rico, New York, and Mexico all in the same year. And that was
Mhm.
because of those early sacrifices.
Yeah. And that's something that I had to learn was that, Alicia, what it's like to be without. You know what it's like to want something and not be able to get it. So why put yourself in a situation where you have the income, you have the means to do some things you want to do, but you need to think long term. And so
Right.
that's, I think when we started thinking, okay, we really don't want to do half the stuff. We don't want to have to work so hard. I love the fact that you made that point. You don't want to have to work so hard.
Yeah.
Because if you do it right, you won't have to.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mhm.
My mom would work at the family practice clinic on post. She would
Mhm.
come home around 4:30. She would take a nap and then she would get up and do private duty nursing at night. Like it
Mhm.
was a constant hustle, you know.
Mhm.
And my dad, he worked at First Union until he retired and then he started cleaning up at the church. They were
Mhm.
constantly on the grind,
Yeah.
and I mean, I won't ever tell anybody that I grew up poor because I didn't. My parents were just older, so some things they just
Yeah.
weren't gonna do.
Yeah.
Um, but I watched them grind hard so
Mhm.
that we could live a middle class life.
Right.
And I don't want that. I don't want to be 70 years old having to go to work. Now, if I want to go, that's one thing, but
Right.
having to go to work, I don't want to have to, go through
Right.
that.
That's a good point. So I want to just really quickly, like I want to touch on because I don't believe that the for richer for poor vows were strictly about, and like you said, God is not that deep, but still, I don't believe that for richer for poor was only meant to cover money. I
Right.
feel like there is a mindset that plagues some people. It could be how you were raised, it could be your life experiences, but sometimes we're not always on the same page with each other. You might have somebody who's optimistic and
Mm-hmm.
somebody who always sees the bad in a situation.
Yeah.
You might have somebody who, they never have hope. It's
Yeah.
just, I don't know if that dynamic works between two people, but do you think that there's a mindset sometimes in marriages, and it might be seasonal, but do you
Mhm.
think that there's a mindset sometimes where we're not on the same page? Like we don't have this rich versus poor. We have a rich versus poor mindset. Does that make
Yeah,
sense to you?
yeah,
Okay.
and it
Okay.
right, and it you know what, and sometimes the roles change.
Mhm.
In the beginning, it may be the wife, being
Mhm.
very pessimistic about the future of the relationship. Then it may shift to the husband, especially when you start having kids, and now
Mhm.
the attention from the wife is not just on the husband, it's on the kids.
Yeah.
Uh, so it's a lot of times where you're not going to be on the same
Same
page.
page.
For us, we had a hard time with starting a family.
Mhm.
We didn't have a hard time getting pregnant. I mean, he could
Mhm.
look at me and I was pregnant. It was just
Mhm.
we had a hard time carrying
Carrying.
kids to full term, right? So
Mhm.
our first pregnancy, we lost that baby at 5 months. We had to
Mhm.
deliver. It was a son.
Mhm.
It was a boy, and we went through a lot
Okay.
during after that,
Mhm.
where we didn't quite see eye to eye.
Mhm.
And it was more so of me dealing with the loss and not understanding that it was also a loss for him as well.
Yes.
And I
Yes.
just I put all of that on myself. It was all on my show. It was me. I was the disappointment. I failed. I couldn't carry the
Mhm.
baby. Me,
Mhm.
and so I kind of shut him out, didn't really want to deal with him. I'm like, I gotta
Mhm.
deal with this, while he's sitting over there screaming, hey, hey, I'm here too. That was my son.
Mhm.
I really wanted the baby just as much as you did. So
Right.
that was a dark time in our marriage. Just dealing with the loss of our first son. And then when we got pregnant with MJ, and I had to go on total bed rest from 13 weeks to 36 weeks.
No,
Yeah.
I didn't know
Yep.
that.
Yep.
Oh.
I was on bed rest the whole time. I was at home. So he was going into work and he would come home and I would go
Mhm.
from the bed to the couch, just staying
Mhm.
in the house, really. They wanted to make
Mhm.
sure that I was able to hold MJ and carry him to
Mhm.
term. So that was a tough time because
Mhm.
here he is having to do everything and his wife is at home, really couldn't do a
Right.
whole lot. Then when we had MJ, now you're adding in how I was
Mhm.
raised and how you were raised and how we gonna raise
Yes.
this
Good
human.
point.
They did not come with a book,
Right.
like what we gonna do?
Mhm.
So for richer and poor is definitely more than money,
Yeah.
especially when you are talking about raising a family. I mean, something as small as sugar and grits. Like we still fuss about that. I mean, you know what I'm saying? I mean, it's the little things that in marriages that can
Right.
become such a big deal,
You're
you
right.
know? Yeah, I mean, when I tell you that that is like a never ending conversation until I just was like, whatever, all y'all can just have diabetes and I'm fine with it because this don't make
Right.
sense. Um, little things can become real big things if you don't know
Yeah.
how to deal with it. And we've gone through that. We've been together now. We've been married 21 years.
Okay.
Yeah, 21 years. And during that 21 years, we have experienced everything there is to
Yeah.
experience
Yeah.
that two human beings brought together can experience.
Yes.
So we kind of know a little bit about for richer, for poor,
Poor.
and
Yeah.
not just when it comes to finances.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
a rich mindset and a poor mindset,
Yeah.
and that's what we've gone through.
Yeah, I definitely can relate to you on um, the journey to parenthood. It was something that I don't talk about it that often, but I was never able to have children. And so it wasn't, I never, like you said, I never had a problem getting pregnant. That was never the issue. But my losses were all very early, like
Yeah,
super, super early. Most people probably wouldn't even know they were pregnant at that time. But because I
yeah,
was always trying,
right.
I was very in tune to, things that were going on. And it got to a point where by the time there was a third loss, and it was an unexpected pregnancy, actually. It
Mm,
was unexpected and it was the third loss. And I was like, yeah, I really don't think I want to do this again. And we went through the exact same things that you mentioned, because at some point I stopped telling him that I was pregnant because I didn't want him to like, what if we lose this one? You know, I
Yep.
don't want him to go through the emotion of what that looked like. And I don't think I ever really, we didn't have a conversation about it until it got to, okay, we don't need to do this anymore. Like, just, we need to just lay this down, and it's not in our cars. We're going to be all right. And so, but yeah, but during that time frame, I was always the one who was just constantly beating myself up. You know, I had this poor mindset that I
Yep.
wasn't going to come out of it, that it's not. And he was just like, um,
It's
gonna be all
okay.
right.
Yeah. Right. Yep.
It's gonna be all right. Like, listen, don't worry about it. It's okay. Like, I'm not angry with him, not mad. Like, it is what it is. But you
Yeah.
couldn't tell me that, because
Exactly.
that, as a wife, that's what I'm supposed to, that's what I'm supposed to do, right? Is be able to
Right.
bear children, and not being able to affected a lot of how we communicated, but it was something he never dwelled on. And so I had to get up on his level when it came to, okay, how are we going to get through the rest of it? So I think you're absolutely right. We are always going to be on different, not always, we'll have moments
Yeah.
where we're not on the same page. So
Yeah.
that leads me to, and I don't want to keep you too much longer, but that does lead me to ask about financially. Our careers are really what hold us. That's how we had this house, that's how we had these lights on. Our jobs, our careers are things that we need. And one of the things that happened to us, I think it was this year, maybe even in last year, my husband decided he was going to leave a job he was at for 14, 17, however long we've been married. That's how long he's been. 17, 16 years at the time. And I was like, I really wish that we had had a conversation about this change, but he was just adamant that he didn't want to be there anymore. I don't want to do this. I'm not happy. So who am I to tell him that, even if he hadn't told me, wasn't gonna say, no, you need to stay at that job. And I didn't want to put him in a situation where he had to make that decision. And it was a financial change. For a while, we had to make adjustments in how we spent, what we spent our money on. Did we have to change anything that we, purchases, all that. So I noticed early in our conversation before we got on the call, actually, I asked you about, I knew that wasn't, I don't remember Marlon being in the ministry prior to you guys getting married. So I'm like, when did that happen? And did it have any bearing on you guys financially when he made that change?
Woo, girl, listen, that book, that book is still being worked on, because I did not know Marlon Allen was going to be a pastor. Had I
Right.
known Marlon Allen was going to be a pastor, my last name might not have been Allen. And I'm just keeping it 100. Um, I remember when he called me to tell me that he felt like he was being called. It wasn't I felt like, he was like, I am being called. And I responded, call to do what? And he said, I'm God is calling me to preach. And I'm thinking, well, you need to pray a little bit more, because I didn't hear that call. I
Right.
didn't hear it at all.
Right.
And he was crying because he really felt that tug. He felt like, he had been running from it for so long, and
Mhm.
and God was telling him to do that. I talked to his aunt. She's passed away now. I talked to
Mhm.
her
Mhm.
after this revelation of his, and I just told her, I was like, I don't even know all the books of the Bible. How I'm gonna be a preacher's wife?
How you gonna be
Like
a first
that
lady?
ain't even right. Like, how you gonna do this? Like that's not even my, I mean,
Right.
people that know me, I'm far from. I love Juvenile, back that thing up is like the most
Same for
romantic
me.
song to me. So
Okay.
how, like that's my song. That's my jam. So how am I gonna be this first lady?
Yeah.
And I still got my ear to the streets,
Yeah.
and she told me that that was his call. That was his call, and I did not have to change who I am
Okay.
because of his
Okay.
call. And that was like some of the best advice that I had received early on in Marlon's
Mhm.
ministry. fast forward to us moving to Gwinnett, moving away from family. We did not have any family when we first moved up this way. No support system, just some close friends. That was it. And we were involved in church that we connected when we first got up here. Very involved in the church. Love that church. They had everything that we could possibly ever think of. And Marlon tells me that God is calling him to start a church. So I'm
Okay.
like, okay, how start a church. Now, mind you, I think 6 or 7 months pregnant with Sarah and a
Mm-hmm.
stay-at-home mom. Not only did he
Oh,
say God wanted him to start this church, he said God wanted him to go into full-time ministry. So wanted him to leave his 6-figure job
oh,
with the Boy Scouts
oh,
to go and plant a church.
oh,
Yeah,
my
I think I
goodness.
should have left him there. Yeah, I probably, yeah, I think I should
Like,
have,
you
but
crazy. Like, something
yeah, I
wrong with
should.
you. Yeah,
Something wrong with you. God ain't telling you to do that,
right.
you know. So I was on board with the whole church plant. We started in our house with
Mm-hmm.
5 families. I
Okay.
had Sarah on a Thursday. We had people in our house that Sunday
Oh,
for
wow.
church. Yeah, yeah. When I say we went through a lot with starting that church. Now, what I was not going to allow him to do was leave the Boy Scouts. I was like, I just
Okay.
don't think that God is wanting you to do
Right.
that. That's just a
Right.
stretch. He
Right.
put in 2 weeks notice. I called his boss and was
Oh,
like, he not thinking straight. He
oh,
not thinking straight. No, he can't do this. This is not this is not out. We can't do this. And so his boss was, he was kind about it and he gave him some time, but
okay.
he still walked away from it. He walked
Oh,
away. Yep. He
oh,
walked away from his job to do full-time ministry. And in all honesty, Alicia, we are still picking up the pieces from that. We
okay.
are still trying to rebuild what we had from that.
Mm-hmm.
I pray for him often because we don't even have the church anymore. But
But
one thing that we were able to do well was the outreach part of ministry. Couldn't really
mhm.
get people to come on Sunday morning, but outreach we could do.
Okay.
We were and this one reason is because we are so involved in the community up here with the
Mm-hmm.
kids playing sports, with events at school. I was part of PTA. Marlon was the chaplain at the high school, so we could get people to embrace our community outreach. But Sunday
Mm-hmm.
morning we just couldn't do.
Couldn't do
So
it.
we
Okay.
made the decision to go on and stop Sunday morning ministry. It was a lot on our family. It was a
Okay.
lot
Okay.
just because we were a mobile church. We did not have a location.
Okay.
We were meeting out of a high school. We had to set up every morning, every Sunday morning. We had to take down every Sunday morning. We
Mm-hmm.
had to pay for storage. It was just a lot
It was
that
on.
it took to get the church going. And 7 years into it, there were stints during that time where souls were not even saved in church on Sunday. So we in order
Okay.
to save our family, save our marriage, we had to
Right.
make that decision to stop the church. But he still gets calls to do,
Mm-hmm.
to do sermons. He's still
Yeah.
a pastor, and that's what I had to help him to see, that everybody's ministry is not a pulpit ministry.
Not the same.
And
Yeah.
yeah,
Definitely.
some people try to hold on to that pulpit ministry just a little too long when there's a lot to be done out in the marketplace, is what the Bible says. There's a lot to be
Mm-hmm.
done out in the streets, outside of the four walls, instead of
Mm-hmm.
just playing church and going through the routines of church.
Mm-hmm.
There's so much work to be doing, and we are continuing to do that work.
Do you think that, because I've always felt like sometimes it takes the wife, or somebody close to you to help
Yeah.
you see what, I need to show you what I see. And
Yeah.
so sometimes I don't think because I wonder though with him, has he ever seen, the work that he does with the Boy Scouts, the work that he does with, the teams for the kids.
Mm-hmm.
Has he ever looked at that as being a part of his ministry?
It took me having to bring that to his
Yeah.
attention.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
with MJ, with our son playing travel ball, travel baseball, there were on Sunday where he would have tournament, and that would kind of pull us from church. Marlon would
Mhm.
preach and leave and then come to the games. But
Mhm.
times where we were out there really early, gather the boys together and do like a small devotional and do prayer.
Mhm. Yeah.
And I had to let him see, look, this your ministry right here.
Mhm. Yeah.
This is your flock,
Yeah.
dealing with these boys and dealing with
Yeah.
these athletes. You have a unique way of reaching them that other pastors probably don't have, and that's just
Right.
because you are an athlete and you can
Right.
speak to them on their level. So he recognizes that he
Okay.
is a pastor to really to sports teams, or really to the athlete, the true
Yeah. The
athlete at
athlete.
heart.
Yeah.
For
Yeah.
him to be the chaplain at the high school, he's been a chaplain at the high school for 13 years now.
Oh wow. Okay.
Yeah, at the same high school. So that's his ministry. And you're right, it took me pointing those things out to him, to
Mhm.
let him know, and for me to be okay with, let's shut the church down. We
Yeah.
tried it, it didn't work. Let's move on. I ain't gonna be shame about it. You
Right.
shouldn't be shamed about it. We
Right.
are still real connected to the folks that were connected with us. I mean, we
Good.
got some deep relationships with the folks that were a part of the ministry from the
Mhm.
beginning and stayed with us throughout. Even those that came and decided to go to other ministries, we're still connected to them. So
Okay.
lives were changed because of
Okay.
Victorious.
Yeah.
Connections were made because of Victorious.
Yeah.
But that was just a season in our marriage, and that
Correct.
season's over.
Correct. Correct. Good. That's
Mhm.
good. That's good stuff. I want to try to go ahead and get us closed out. And the question that I've been asking the wives in previous episodes was, and this is probably, I may just only ask one because the other one might require a longer conversation.
Okay.
But what advice would you give someone who is either preparing to get married or desires to be married when it comes to having the conversation about finances and how important that is? I mean, we can't not talk about money. We
Right.
have
Yeah.
to. And so,
Yeah.
what advice would you give someone who, who, like I said, desires to be or getting ready to be married? What advice would you give them to prepare for that experience?
You gotta know. Not knowing is worse than knowing. You
Okay.
have to know. You gotta approach the union, the marriage, as a business partnership. I know
Okay.
that may sound harsh,
No, I get
but
it. Mhm.
you're not gonna go
Mhm.
into business with somebody. Now, some people do, and
Mhm.
those are the businesses that don't really last that long. But you wouldn't really go into business with somebody not knowing what they can bring to the table and
Wouldn't.
what type of struggles and stuff they already have, especially with the finances.
Right.
So that's the same way you need to approach this marriage, because it ain't
Mhm.
gonna go away. It's not
Mhm.
gonna go away. You need to find out up front, what does the credit look like? What are his spending habits? What
Mhm.
are my spending habits? Where are
Yes.
my struggles? What are my non-negotiables? Like for me, my non-negotiable was I wasn't gonna pay for my own ring. So get what you can, get what you
Right.
can pay for.
Right.
I wasn't gonna go into a marriage in debt from a wedding of feeding folks.
Mhm.
So you know what we did? We got married in the middle of the day. I figured everybody had already had lunch. It was too early for dinner, so we can give y'all some sandwiches and everything will be okay. Right.
Yeah.
So I mean, that's my thought process
Yeah.
around things.
Yeah.
So I would encourage anybody when they're dating to find out about your other person, your significant other's spending habits, or just find out about their credit. Go on and pull the credit report. I
Right.
mean, it's a
Right.
snapshot. That's
Yeah.
a snapshot of their
It
whole credit here. That's a snapshot of their
is.
character, really. They got
Yes.
stuff
Good
just
point.
outstanding. Yeah, they got stuff just sitting out there. Ask them, dude, why you ain't paid this? Like, what's the
Good
deal? Like,
point.
how you plan on tackling this?
Good
Because you
point.
will get more debt when you get together. You're gonna want to buy a house, you're gonna want to buy a car, you're gonna want to, you may
Yeah.
have one of you may get sick and you got all these medical bills now
Mm-hmm.
that you got to tackle. So you got to
Mm-hmm.
know about it. You
You gotta
have
know
to know
about
about it. Have the conversation.
it. And so finally, this question I'm always curious about because I've learned a lot about myself since I've been married. And it's a hard conversation sometimes for me because I think that it's important for us to change. I think if you stay the same as you were,
Right.
there's no growth and y'all are pretty much stagnant in your marriage if you're not
Yeah.
growing. So just to close us out, tell me, what have you learned about Tasha? Not just in terms of finances, but what have you learned about yourself over the past couple years, um, that you've seen growth with? Is there anything that you might have done back in the day that you no longer do? Like, how have you grown into the role of being a wife and a mom? What does that look like for you?
Ooh, that's a good one. One thing that I have learned is everybody got something.
Mm,
Everybody has something.
yeah.
Everybody's stuff stank,
Yeah.
never say never, and
Mhm.
you really don't know how you will deal with the situation
Don't know.
until it happens to
You
you.
don't know.
You just don't know. So what I have learned over the years is I've learned to listen more
Mm,
to people's struggles, and
mhm.
I never thought that I was judgmental until now. And I'm sorry. Look, I got this whole beach set up. I'm outside because that's where I
Well,
really
you
want to
you
be.
ended
But
up
these
on the
but
beach.
these doggone relentless flies are killing me. I'm sorry. But I
That's
never
all
really
right.
yeah, I never really thought that I was judgmental
Mhm,
until I sat back and just thought about my reaction to things that people close to me may have been going through, or or things they were experiencing, and my
mhm,
reaction to it, or even my advice to them. It was
mhm.
always, girl, no, I wouldn't take that, or you shouldn't put up with that. You should, yeah,
Oh,
until
okay.
it happened to me,
Right.
you know, until, I was
Yep.
disappointed, or
Mhm,
until my kids did something that I'm like, you
mhm,
gotta know better,
mhm.
or until I'm trying to hide, some of my stuff so won't nobody find out. So
Right.
now your girl don't look at nobody any kind of way. It's just like it is what it
It
is.
is.
I
Yeah.
feel I feel that I can walk into any room in any crowd and sit with anybody and be able to have a honest conversation and walk out with, not necessarily making a new friend, but
Mhm,
walk out with, you know what? I had this one thing in common with that person.
mhm.
And that's just, and I hadn't always been that way.
Okay. Okay.
I hadn't always been that way. I'm the baby of 8 kids. And
Yes,
so,
you are.
yeah, and I ain't never have no struggle, and
Mhm.
life pretty much was pretty easy for me.
Yeah,
And so to actually have struggles as an adult, now I get it.
you get it.
I
Yes.
get the things that my mama went through. I
Yeah.
get the struggles that some of my siblings have gone through. I get all that now.
Right.
So I've learned a lot about Tasha and how to be a better listener and how not to be so judgmental, and just know
Mhm.
that everybody got something.
Everybody
Everybody got
has
something.
something. That's really, really good. I like that a lot. I know for me, I've learned that I used to think that I was just really super patient. Like, oh, I'm just patient. But I also found out that I was a people pleaser
Mm-hmm.
earlier in our marriage, and my husband is the complete opposite. Like, he
Mm-hmm.
could care less. I mean,
Yeah.
they don't want to know what. Nope. Everybody got to say, I'm not. It's not. It don't bother me.
Yep.
It does has nothing to do with me, but I always wanted to, oh my goodness, we gotta call them, we gotta do this, we gotta do this, we gotta help,
Mm-hmm.
and he was just the complete opposite. And I was always on edge, always.
Yeah.
Like, I was
Yeah.
always worried about folks and wanted to help and I wanted to fix things. And he was like, it's not for you to fix. And it took
Mm-hmm.
me watching him and how he actually responded to certain situations, like, okay, I don't have to be involved in all that. Like, I can let all that go. Like, I don't have to, respond. And I
Yeah.
think that's one of the hugest things that I've grown with is I just have like, I don't care, that had nothing to do with me. Unless I need to be available, I
Right.
stop making myself so available,
Yeah.
to people. Yep.
Yeah. And see, and that's kind of the opposite for me, because I wasn't gonna be I'm like your husband. I wasn't like, why you need to borrow money from me? Like, if you need to borrow something from me, you almost had to fill out an application. Cause it's I got a million questions. But Marlon helped me to realize it's $25. Let them have the
Correct.
$25.
That's
We're gonna
it.
be okay, you know.
Right,
So those
right,
were the
right.
things I had to learn, that, because it may be me one day. We may be
Oh,
in a
yes.
situation,
Ye
where it's us that will need somebody to have that compassion for
Yeah,
us. So that's
yeah,
what I've learned about me.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, Tasha, I have enjoyed you. I don't want to take up too much more of your time. I know you got a family you have to get to, and I don't know, you might have to watch a game or two tonight. I don't know, but I don't want to keep you. I don't want to keep you too much longer. I do appreciate your time, for taking the time out and having this conversation with us. I may touch back with you on
Okay.
this topic because I did not have a lot of people to chime in, and I may want to dig a little bit deeper into maybe some details on how to properly manage money that we might can talk about.
I would love that.
Okay,
Yep.
okay, so I will touch back with you,
Okay.
because I ended up canceling 2 episodes, so I'll probably touch back with you and see
Okay.
if we can't have a deeper conversation about it, because I
Mhm.
feel like it's a topic worth having.
Yeah.
And so I want to touch back with you, but I really appreciate your time tonight. Thank you so much. If you'll hold on one second for me,
Okay.
and we'll just let everybody get settled for the rest of their night. Thank you so much.
Okay. Thank you for having me.